Hey everyone, so today we're going to be looking at another rock sculpt. I'm probably just going to start with a sphere and I'm just going to start moving this guy around. Um, and the goal of this is to just really just practice, but I thought um, I'd record it, see how it goes. Um, so what I'm doing now is just looking at my reference, which is kind of like this big coastal rock. And I'm just going to pull the forms out roughly to the same kind of shapes, and then we will start sculpting. So I'm just going to do something like that, go to brush clay build up and start just putting some shapes in. What I'm noticing in my references, there's actually quite a lot of layering going on, so I've just got the symmetry on for now, just while I block some of this in, but I'll turn it off every now and again just to kind of go back and forth. And what I'm really trying to do here is just give myself enough information for the brushes I'll use following this to kind of play with and um, figure out. So I'm just going to flatten this, bring it down as well. Cool. Just going to up res a bit as well. So I'm just going to knock in some shapes. And again, just being pretty heavy handed here. Just knocking bits about, getting some forms, changing brush size, seeing what's going on. And I think it's important to try and get, as much kind of just general detailing and stuff as we do this. And try not to have any weird stuff that we're going to build off later. So I'll just knock some bits about, pull some stuff out. And I'm using the brush clay build up here, but you can use a variety of other brushes, to be honest. Clay tubes, you could even just start with a trim brush. But again, this is just kind of like how I go about it. And again, just trying to get as much kind of shaping into this guy at an early stage, just so we have some stuff to play with later. So I'm still new to this whole recording process stuff, and my first one was kind of a slower dabble. Um, but I'm going to kind of try and speed up to a degree how fast I do some of this stuff. So in form wise, I'm kind of happy with what's going on. Just gonna put some more. I think with rocks in general, you kind of want as much detail in the profile. Like you want lots of knocks, you want lots of kind of silhouette breakup, because when it catches the light and you've got all those details coming through, it makes it just feel more like a rock, right? Um, so again, I'm just gonna be super heavy-handed. I can see kind of some almost like some plane changes from like a vertical section in my reference. For context, uh, this is my reference, this guy. So we're gonna just try and put some of that stuff in pretty early. So I'm gonna go in with the lasso or something. Just take some of these bits, and you can do this two ways, right? You could either polygroup it and separate it, um, or for the time being, I'm just gonna mask them and shrink them just so I get a bit more of that form going. Again, there's kind of like a upwards directionality with this, so I'm just gonna do some stuff like this, roughly. And again, those are some super straight lines, right? So we'll come cut those up in a second. So go into the trim smooth border brush, and I'm just gonna start really trying to knock some of this stuff in now. And again, super heavy-handed. We'll come back in here a bit later with some plane shifts and stuff. But for now, let's just get it feeling pretty blocky. And the process here is once I kind of get all this stuff knocked in, I'm going to go in with some alphas, some more detailing, and kind of sharpen some of these bits up. So we'll see how it goes. Just trying to practice, get better. The grind is never ending. So I'm just gonna kind of work all this stuff in. Anything that feels a little bit too blobby, just gonna work it in a bit. And to be fair, what I'm gonna do actually here is just up-res a little bit, just got a bit more to play with. And you'll kind of see it'll slowly start to come together. It's one of those things that just requires a lot of just kind of working. So when I'm doing this, I'm really just kind of looking at the reference and seeing what's kind of sticking out or what's going in, and then trying to reflect that in the brush strokes I'm doing. Again, I'm not really trying to focus on directionality of the brush strokes at this point. It's more just using this brush to bring out some of those forms a bit more. I'm just going to tighten up the focal shift a bit just so we have a bit more sharpness, and chunk some stuff out, re-dynamesh every now and again just so we've got some polys to play with. And I'll probably go back in a second just to flatten the floor again. So just knock that up a bit, not too much. We got some bits going on with it. So just and again, just big heavy-handed strokes at this point. We're not worried about detail. We're just working off the original brush strokes we laid as kind of form holders. So and you see when I get stuff like this, you know, it's not great, but there's an easy way to fix that, really. I'm just going to grab the Orb Flatten Edge brush, which is on my... I just added some new brushes, so things have switched around a bit. So I'm just going to flatten some of this out again, using the picker tool to kind of bring this back out. Kind of works. And again, I might just stick with this brush for the minute just to knock some shape back into some of these negative forms, but I'll go back to the trim brush in a second because this is kind of an intense brush, so we'll just knock it down a bit, maybe just to bring some of that stuff back up. Cool. And I'm noticing there's like this kind of nice layering going on with this rock, so just trying to reflect some of that as much as I can. And again, when we get to the detailing stage, when we start laying cracks and stuff over it, we should be in a good place. So continue using this brush just to ping stuff about and just get some nice kind of levels to stuff. I'm just going to re-dynamesh again. Just to get some super nice lumpy forms, and again changing brush size every now and again, working some stuff in, kicking some stuff back, re-dynameshing. And one thing you don't want is anything that's too angular like this, because everything kind of erodes differently, right? So just gonna knock some stuff in there, knock some stuff in here. Cool. I'm gonna go in with the clay tubes, just kind of chunk some stuff away now. So some of this edging, push some of it up, take some of it back, and you'll kind of see where this starts to come together a bit in a minute. And I'm really just kind of like speeding through this, like knocking stuff about. And that's what we want to do, is just get lots of nice kind of form detail in this thing. And when I feel like I'm satisfied with where these kind of forms are sitting, I can up-res again and just kind of go back in and chunk some more stuff in. So again, just when it's like kind of a super complex rock surface like this, you kind of want to just put as much of that kind of layer in as you can. Of course, we're going to go back over with alphas a bit later. But from a form point of view, got to make sure it's pretty cushy in general. So that's what we're doing right now. Cool. Just going to knock some of this stuff back as well. And then when I feel like I have enough kind of information to work off, something like that, I'm going to go in with the just a done standard at the minute, just to cut some stuff in as well. So of course some of this stuff isn't too perfect, but this is just to accentuate some of those kind of edging at the minute and then rework it back later. So I actually see in my ref I'm a bit too far gone to per se on these sizes, so just going to go back in and work some of this stuff back out. Up the res a bit more. Not too much more. What are we at now? 2 mil? Or mildew. So as soon as you like go to a certain resolution, you'll notice that the trim brush just starts to really kind of clean up some of this stuff really well. And that's kind of what we're after right now, is just all those kind of blobby forms that we made prior. Just working some of that stuff in a bit more. And this is kind of the part that takes the longest, because you don't really want to rush this per se, because all the strokes you do are giving yourself that kind of surface kind of wear, the surface detailing, sorry, where you're going to build off later. So a lot of this stuff just needs to be worked in and just really take your time kind of figuring out what's going on in the ref that you're trying to represent. And again, I'm just going to Dynamesh every now and again just to bring myself back some of that stuff. I'm actually just going to flatten my floor plane again. So I'm just going to do this, drag it down a little bit, re-Dynamesh. Well, it would be good if it was all level, eh? Right, there we go. So I do this. Voila. Just knock a lot of this stuff in. And again, I said this in the other video, but the picker brush, which you can get up here, allows you to change your brush orientation. So if you ever want to kind of get some nice angular edging like this type of stuff, it's super good for just knocking that stuff in. So I see it quite a lot in my reference, just here, there, and everywhere. So I'm just going to kind of echo some of that to a degree. And it doesn't have to be too perfect for now, but we are going to just want to try and make it feel kind of good. So I'm just going to use this now to just cut some bigger stuff in. Again, not looking to be pixel perfect at this point, just kind of looking at what the ref's doing. And echoing that. So just going to reset that and then just work some of this stuff back in. And really what I'm just trying to do now is, again, just look at where I've got shapes, figure out if I want to bounce off them, figure out if I want them anymore, try and get some nice kind of changes in the shape and style, and just overall just work this surface so we're getting a lot of nice kind of plane changes and detailing really on the surface of this rock. And I'm using still pretty big brush, I'm not going too small on a lot of this stuff, but like you kind of want to just get those big forms right. So just going to knock a lot of this stuff in, probably pull some more of this out just so we've got some nice kind of edging going on. And in fact what I'm probably going to do here is just mask a bit and pull it out and then remesh it, redynamesh it, and then just knock it about a bit. Again, this is like a perfect square, so we don't really want that. So just work it in. Take some of this corner stuff off it, and I'll probably do this a few times, right, just to make the profile not as rounded. And it's important to kind of spin your model around quite a lot and see what all the angles are doing, just so you kind of know where you're at with the entire thing per se. Because what might look good one angle might not look good another angle. Case in point right here. So I'm just going to clean some of this up. And again, just go back in, work some of this stuff in. So we've kind of neglected the other side at the minute, so probably just going to spin this around and start working some of that in, but we're not getting too far away from what we want. And you can kind of see, like, as soon as we will up-res again, we can go back into all these planes and just do like another detailing pass, and it's kind of just layers, right? You want to just work on your macro forms at first, and then once your macro forms are pretty good, go to your mesos, and then once you run your mesos good, you go to your detailing, and detailing and micro kind of details, like, it's kind of up to how you want to present this rock in the end. If you want to do like a super high poly sculpt, make it look really good, not really care about texturing, or maybe you're working for nanite with nanite or something, you know, completely up to you. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to knock some stuff about, see how it goes, and then we'll go from there. So I'm just going to switch material, just because I normally do work in this material, but for something that's a bit crazy like this, I'm just going to go to something a bit flatter. Might switch back to it or go to the gloss version. Yeah, we'll stick with the gloss version for now. So, and the purpose of that is really just to see kind of where my cavities and edge highlights are, because at the macro form stage, from a distance, that's what you're going to be reading, right? You're going to be reading those big planes. And then all the stuff that comes after is what you'd either expect to see coming through in your normal map, or maybe, again, working with nanite, so you preserve the meso stuff to a degree. So let's just knock some of this stuff in. Again, being pretty goddamn heavy-handed, which is good. It's good to be confident with some of these strokes. And again, when I've knocked some stuff in, I'm just gonna re-dynamesh and then clean up some of the underside stuff. And sometimes you'll find with the trim brush you can kind of get some super nice lines going on. Maybe that line's too long for what I actually want, but you know, it's good to just follow some stuff through sometimes and see where it takes you. And similar to the other side, what I'm probably going to do here is, instead of the rectangle tool this time, just going to lasso, grab some bits, pull it out a bit. Notice I got some extra bits going on there, so just going to stick with this now. Just pull that out a bit. Still got some bits, but it's fine to clean up. So I'm just going to re-dynamesh off the back of that. Just smooth this stuff in, it's fine. It's not a worry. And it's kind of like at this stage of the sculpt where you are probably thinking, does it even look like a rock at this point? And that's okay, because once we get past this stage, you'll start to see the vision, hopefully. So I'm actually being a bit too big with some of this stuff, so I'm just gonna come back in some of this. But yeah, just working on some of this stuff. Kind of liking this edging that's going on, so we're just gonna play with this a bit. Cool. And this top bit's kind of been neglected at this point in terms of a lot of the profile. It's still looking super blobby, so just going to stick with a smaller brush on a little bit like this and just kind of knock some of this stuff away and try and retain. And there is another easy way to kind of get a lot of that edging back a bit later with alphas, so we'll just do some work on this guy right now. Just the key really is to just really pull back that blobby nature that we had. And you'll notice when you pull back a bit, you'll start to see some of these forms might be a bit too chaotic at this stage, so just going to go back in and from a far distance read and kind of see what feels a bit too much. Because again, at a macro distance, you kind of want a lot of this stuff to just read really cleanly, and maybe you're just going to run tilables over it in general. So that's where we'll fiddle with. And noticing some bits are looking a bit sad and barren, so I'm going to go back in here. Just knock some of this stuff up. Re-dynamesh every now and again. Edges like this, right? Big no-no. So use a few different brush sizes, some breakup. Where you do have these kind of ledges coming in, just make sure you're tightening them up a bit. Cool. So some of this stuff, just gonna, again, I feel like this should be a little bit of a bigger plane, just from a far read. So do. So. So there's a few shapes here I can see that feel just a bit inorganic in general, so just gonna work on some of that stuff now. And then we'll quickly move on to the detailing phase. Well, not detailing, but the meso phase. So one thing you'll notice is this crack that I put in earlier. Not really carrying it around. So I'm just going to do that now. When I can get my picker tool to work. So I mean something like this. Carry it through. Wonderful. And then with this guy, try and do something a bit cleaner. Lovely, something like that. Yeah, we like that. Cool. I'm just gonna reset picker. Go back in here. Just gonna mask this bottom bit, just so we don't get it. And at this stage, really, you know, there's a lot of tidy up to do on a complex rock like this. But what I'm going to do at this point is just go a little bit higher res. Look at it again from the forms. Notice in this backside feels a bit lackluster. So and again, anywhere I feel like it's just a bit too noisy from a macro read, I'm really just going to chunk that in, because it's all about those big forms at this stage. So chunk, chunk, chunk. Backside's feeling kind of weird. Just gonna nudge some of this stuff up, I think, and I'm gonna go to the old brush, or maybe the plain brush, we'll see. That is the wrong brush. I'm just gonna put a little. So I'm holding Alt when I do this, just so I get the inverse of what it would normally do. And what I'm really trying to do here is just put in a nice kind of level, something like this. And again, go back to the trim smooth border brush. Now just cut this stuff in. Cool. So we got something that's a little bit similar to what we see in the ref. I might just want to, again, some of this stuff on the side. Let's work it in a bit. That's what I'm going to do. Cool, and there's a few things we kind of want to maybe do now, and that's either a damn standard brush or any crack brush that you've got. Not that one, that's for sure. So I've got my crack curve brush, yeah, or is there the slash curve brush? Am I imagining that brush? I think I'm imagining, which is all good. Again, just to go in and some of those bigger lines just accentuate. So, and they look pretty soft at the minute. That's fine. That is fine. It's more about just defining those kind of planes again. So, just going to be a bit quick with this, just to define some of that stuff. And then when I feel like I'm kind of in the realms of a reasonable mid-form, or large form rather, probably just move on to the miso. So again, some of these big shapes that I've got, I'm just going to cut those out a bit. And again, the whole process of this is to literally just make sure those forms can stand on their own, and as a player or viewer you can separate this from this, etc. And it's fine to have some smaller shapes in here like the guys I've got going down here, but you don't want your big forms to be super noisy, otherwise it's going to be really hard to look at. So, and you're kind of just defining at this point the information you've already put in, almost like cookie cutter in it, which is kind of what you want to do. You want those to feel like separate parts. So I'm just going to go in here, reinforce a lot of that stuff, maybe take some liberties where I've put some forms in already that we can work in a bit later. So again, just cut some of this stuff in, cut that back out. Grab this guy, cut him out, maybe just follow that line up a bit. Wonderful. Do I want to do something like, yeah, let's do something like this. And here's actually like a kind of a weird shape, so just gonna, yeah, let's just flatten that guy out. It's all good. So again, there's just a little bit sharp forms going on here and there, so soft forms rather, so just gonna work that stuff in a bit. And then when I feel like overall we're kind of happy with the read, we'll continue onwards. Wait for autosave. And you can kind of see by just going in here with this brush and high resolution and just edging some stuff up, you start to get a lot of that kind of detail that you'd expect to see in a rock sculpt. And sometimes you just want to kind of mess around with the inverse effects of the brush just to pop stuff out, clean stuff up, because it's never always going to be as super straightforward as you would hoped. So just part of the process. Part of the process. Because if you keep your forms kind of big and you keep your like edge lines kind of clean, you're more in the realms of stylized, which is fine. Like if that's the look you're going for, then that's the goal, right? But for when you come to do like high resolution detailed assets, or every stroke that you put into these edges and every plane change will come through. And it also helps when it comes to running it through a shader or a texture that you'll have all this information through either a curvature or maybe something that you're baking down um, for that stuff to just play with and find all those cavities and run off it. So again, just gonna try and do some of that now. Where I feel like I've got too much negative space, I'm just going to go back in there with this smaller brush at this point and just work some of that in. Cool. And if you did really want to clean up some of those, you could either use the planar, the polish brush, the orb flatten, and go in here, right, and just kind of work it up to flatten it, right? But for the case of this, I'm not worried about that, so that's the wrong thing I'm doing. There we go. I've just really taken the edges that I've laid, the foundational edges that I've laid before at this point, and just really accentuating them a bit so they're not as soft. And by doing this, especially with a smaller brush, again, you're going to get all that detail you'd expect to see in a rock sculpt. And at the minute I'm just focused on like the bigger stuff, like the bigger kind of plane changes I'm seeing in my model. But it does not hurt to just give everything a nice lick of paint. So for the process of this video and time's sake, I'm not going to detail the front, probably not the back. I'm just going to work on some of the sides, and then we'll just to show you the full process. Probably continue it off in the spare time, but not necessarily on video, just because it does take a while to make sure everything is super clean. So again, just review your model, spin around it, see what's looking good, what maybe is not looking so good. Go in there and just give it some love, but try and respect those macro shapes that you put in earlier. You don't want to over tune some of those shapes, because again you want that to read cleanly from a distance. let's do this. Cool. Again, just using this brush really to just put some of those thin kind of layers in as well, and anywhere where I see some of the forms looking a bit soft, just go in there, just tip tap, tappity tap, and tighten some of that stuff up. Cool. Cool. So I'll just clean this face up as well, and then we'll probably just work from kind of this perspective. So redynamesh, and at this point let's just throw some alphas into test. So I have a bunch of alphas located in my alphas. So probably looking for something coastal-esque, a bit rounded. Let's try this one. So I'm going to set this to drag rect, alpha. I'm going to go to modify, make sure surface is on. As you can see, like when we stretch this stuff out, we get some super nice stuff. So in this case, I'm just going to mask some bits, which for some reason is on a different thing from what I expected to be. Drag something like that out. Am I happy with that? Maybe not. Let's try a different alpha. Something like this potentially. Yeah, that'll do. I'm just going to set the intensity up a little bit. Maybe not that much. Cool. And again, you probably want to polish some of these faces before you do this. But for the purpose of this video, we're just going to run like we know ball. And this is, you kind of see at this point what the power of alphas actually is. It's like, why would I spend a lot of time sculpting a lot of this stuff when I can just use an alpha to punch a lot of these lines in. And by doing this, again, this is running all over those macro forms, right, that I made before. So I'm just going to switch alpha so we don't have too much of the same thing going on. So let's go for something a bit straighter. This guy. Cool. So, and again, when you throw in alphas on, you don't really want to be too willy-nilly hasty with it. You kind of want to obviously look at what the ref is doing, but as well try and just figure out where you've placed stuff already and try and run off the back of that. So now we've got a pretty kind of crazy looking rock, right? But what we kind of want to do at this point is, I'm not going to re-subdivide. What I'm going to do instead is just standard divide. And I'm actually just going to go back in here now with a trim brush. Lower res. lower intensity, and just kind of work some of this stuff back in. Because what's basically happened at this point is those forms that you've worked on and those forms that you've been punched in by the alpha, you know, they kind of get a bit soft. So again, you want a lot of your planes to kind of read. You can maintain some of the detail obviously as you do this, but for now, I'm just going to go in with this brush, push some stuff about, and I'll probably jump back to my other material shortly. I've been on this one for a while. So you can kind of see what we're doing though, where I've cleaned stuff up. You know, it just pops a bit better and just reads a bit better, but we're getting all that high information that would have taken us a few hours to probably sculpt and get right. So it really does not hurt to just trust the way of the alpha sometimes. So I'm just gonna go back in here. And again, the cleanup process on this does take some time, and that's just something you just need to accept and prepare yourself for. But that's how the cookie crumbles per se. And stuff like this where I've got like a lot of kind of edging going on. I'm just gonna come back in here a bit and mucky some of this up. So you can kind of see where we're at with this at the minute. It's looking okay. Again, just anywhere. And this is like the important step, right? Like you can't just draw an alpha on and just call it done. You do have to rework some bits, and that's okay. Really, I'm just looking for those opportunities where things didn't come out as cleanly as I had hoped originally, and just rework it in. So once we've got something like that, like you can do a few things off the back of that. You can either go back in with some more alphas, maybe lower size. So I don't know if I just grab something like this. Can't remember which one this one is. Okay, scratch that one. That one doesn't want to play ball. This one maybe. Oh, it's because I'm on the wrong brush. There you go. You live and you learn, eh? So, you know, we've got like these hairline cracks and stuff. So we could, oh my lord. Just double check we're still on surface. We are. So like if I drag this out right, it's going to be super crazy. I'm just going to pull that back a bit. And on some of these flat faces that we just cleaned up, you can just drag some of these out. And you can even store a morph target and clean up some of this stuff. Or you could just mask like this, right? And then drag it around. And again, it's important to kind of see what the lines that you've previously put in are doing. So like we see all the lines are going like one way, right? So if I go do and then invert and then drag this guy out, we kind of want these cracks to follow a lot of the similar stuff that's going on here. So I'm just going to put a few of these in. Again, just to break up the some of the surfacing on this rock. And I mean, I am doing this kind of fast just for the process of the video, right? But let's go back to our other material. I don't even think it's loaded anymore. I know it is. Cool. So, you know, we got a rock like this now. I still feel like some of the profiles feeling a bit straight, so there's a cheaty way to do this, which is if I go to my alphas and grab something crazy. There we go. So what you can do is, obviously not to this degree, but at some stage you can go in with like a crazy alpha that's pretty intense and just kind of edge some of these angles up. So for the process of this, I'm just going to do that now quickly on some of these faces. The same thing I would say still, you know, the same thing I said previously still stands, where if you use alphas you do need to go and work these back in. So again, for the process of the video, I'm just going to throw these in, destroy the work I've currently done, just so we kind of get some of that nice kind of edging going on. But then we can double down on our Dynamesh again and rework some stuff. Also, it doesn't hurt to, you know, use this alpha just in bits and places and then rework that in as well. So I'm just going to drag some of those around for now. Wait for autosave to kick in. Very cool. You don't want it too intense though. If I drag that over that, it's not going to work. So anywhere that's just looking a bit boring. And again, use your reference, see what's going on in the reference. But what I'm going to do now is just come back in and not have that alpha on. Or drag rectangle. I'm still on drag rectangle apparently. Knock some of this stuff back. And if you don't have any like paid for or custom matte caps or whatever, because that's kind of what I'm using, I'd always suggest you to use just either basic material 2 or some form of cavity material, just so you can see your peaks and valleys. Again, the one I use is typically a paid for one, or Orbs ones, just because I feel like they do a very good job at showing you those forms. And obviously if you hit BPR, they kind of render super nicely as well. So just gonna check this out. It's very cool. But yeah, that's kind of this video, I guess, for now. We'll probably stick a lid on it here. You can kind of see just how you can get some of that detail pretty quickly. And if you imagine this was some form of, I don't know, valley or something where you're using modular pieces, you'd have to make a kit of them obviously, but you can kind of get some cool shapes going on. So, and again, the important thing here is just like the macro read, so I can see still see all these big shapes, but then at a meso read we can start to see these cracks coming through. And I mean, at a detail kind of view like this, that's where you kind of be running your shader over the top. Now if you had all the time in the world, you could come in here with the trim brush and, you know, and cut up all these things and make all these edges super nice, super crisp. you know, that's for a time where you have time. Cool, so I'm going to leave this here. Let me know if you have any questions or anything. Thanks.